Welcome back. So, as we look back on 2025, wow, what a year. It was just an absolute whirlwind of explosive growth, crazy market jitters, and some really foundational shifts in artificial intelligence. So, what were the key stories that really defined AI this past year? Let's get into it. We're going to break this whole thing down into four big acts. First, we'll dive into the economic frenzy, all the money and the mania. Then, we'll get our feet back on the ground and look at who was actually using this tech and how. After that, we'll explore the totally new ways people started building with AI. And finally, we'll talk about the monster new models that just blew the doors off the end of the year. All right, first up, the financial drama. You really can't tell the story of AI in 2025 without talking about the absolutely unprecedented sums of money that were moving around at just, well, lightning speed. So let me ask you this. What on earth could cause a company like NVIDIA to lose nearly $600 billion in market cap in a single day? I mean, that is the biggest one-day loss in stock market history, and it happened right at the start of the year. The reason why really sets the stage for everything else that followed. The culprit? A Chinese model called DeepSeek R1. Now, it wasn't just that it was good, it was how it was good. It was trained for just a few $1 million. I mean, a tiny fraction of what Western labs were spending. Its chatbot even knocked ChatGPT off the top spot for a while, and it gave millions of people their first taste of a reasoning model. That's an AI that can actually plan and execute complex tasks, and it did it for free. This just sent a massive shockwave through the markets. And that shock? It kicked off an absolute gold rush in AI infrastructure. We're talking OpenAI announcing the $500 billion project Stargate. The big cloud providers, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, massively jacked up their spending. We saw $100 billion investment funds pop up. Elon Musk was expanding to 1 million GPUs. People were even making plans for nuclear-powered data centers. The race was on. But when you see this level of insane spending, with deals worth hundreds of billions for things that don't even exist yet, it's gonna raise some eyebrows. The whole AI bubble debate became maybe the biggest theme of the year, with a lot of people looking at all this and worrying that the whole thing was just a house of cards waiting to come tumbling down. But here's the really interesting counterargument. The proponents were saying, no, you don't get it. This dense web of investments where everyone is a customer of everyone else wasn't a bug, it was the entire point. It was the engine that was driving the mass AIification of the whole economy, where each company's success was literally fueling all the others in this massive virtuous cycle. So that left us with the one question that just dominated the conversation all year. Is this a historic technological boom like the internet, or is it a massive speculative bubble that's just destined to pop? It's a debate that's literally impossible to solve in the moment, which is probably why everyone couldn't stop talking about it. Okay, for our second act, let's pull back from the Wall Street mania for a second and look at what was actually happening on the ground. Inside the real companies trying to make this technology work for them. So one of the most viral and frankly infamous media moments of the year came from an MIT report that made this just stunning claim. 95% of enterprise AI pilots were failing. You saw this headline everywhere. But was it actually true? Not even close. I mean, the whole claim just completely falls apart the second you look at how they got the number. It was based on scanning public earnings reports for mentions of AI revenue, plus about 50 random interviews. They basically just assumed failure because companies weren't already bragging about massive profits. It was a completely staggering leap of logic. And this chart right here, this just perfectly illustrates the real story. The actual data shows pretty much the exact opposite. 38% of companies were reporting high ROI from their AI projects, and another 44% were seeing modest returns. Only 5% reported negative ROI, which, by the way, just means they hadn't broken even yet, not that they'd failed. Now, this drive for real-world results fueled an absolutely ferocious talent war. We're talking top researchers commanding salaries like pro athletes. There were reports of 9-figure. That's over $100 million offers coming from labs like Meta. And it all kind of culminated in Meta's $15 billion acquisition of Scale AI, which a lot of people saw as a massive chess move, just to get its CEO, Alexander Wang, to come lead their superintelligence lab. Just wild. So, we've seen the market, we've seen the people. Now for Act 3, let's look at the really substantive tech shifts that were happening right under the surface, creating a whole new way for people to build with AI. So there was this quiet but incredibly profound change this year, the rise of reasoning models. If you looked at platforms where developers could pick and choose between different AIs, you saw this massive shift. Starting from basically zero, the tokens used for reasoning, for planning and complex problem solving, now make up over half of all usage. Using a reasoning model just became the new default, and that fundamentally changed what you could build. And those powerful reasoning models open the door for what is arguably the single biggest story of the year, vibe coding. And it all started with this one simple tweet from the absolute legend Andrej Karpathy, where he described this new way of building software by just giving in to the vibes of the AI.
So what is it? Vibe coding is basically building stuff with AI just by talking to it in plain English. You see something, you say something, you run it, you copy-paste it. You don't have to be some professional engineer or understand every single line of code for it to work. It was a total paradigm shift in who could actually create software.
And look, this wasn't just some cute curiosity. It was an absolute juggernaut. It became the #1 enterprise use case, accounting for $4 billion in spending. It fueled the insane growth of companies like Replit and Lovable, and it pushed the coding tool Cursor towards an $800 million valuation. Vibe coding was, without a doubt, the real deal. Now, what's so fascinating is how all this was possible. It required fierce competitors to actually cooperate. In any other tech era, this would have kicked off years of brutal standards wars. But instead, you saw labs like OpenAI, Google, and Microsoft all rapidly agree to use shared protocols for AI agents, like Anthropic's MCP and Google's A2A. They all realized that if they collaborated on the foundation, everyone could build their own cool stuff on top of it way faster. And that brings us to our final act. After this kind of mid-year lull where a lot of people were starting to claim that AI had finally hit a wall, the end of 2025 delivered a stunning rebuttal with a whole series of incredibly powerful new models. This year-end explosion really kicked off with Google's Gemini 3, which just completely silenced that whole AI plateau narrative. Then came Anthropic's Opus 4.5, a model that was so good at coding it made everyone rethink the entire future of software engineering. And finally, OpenAI rushed out GPT 5.2 in what felt like a code red response, and it proved to be an absolute powerhouse for complex business strategy. So the key takeaway here is pretty simple. 2025 ended not with a whimper, but with a definitive bang. The debate about AI hitting a wall was over. It was settled. We were ending the year with capabilities that honestly felt like actual superpowers compared to where we started. And that, of course, leaves us with the biggest question of all. This year gave us the tools, the infrastructure, and the talent to build truly incredible things. You could say it gave us AI superpowers. So, what are we going to do with them in 2026?